Happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome back to Trading the Markets with Kris Bullock, aka Blastoplas. We've got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about monthly timeframes. We're going to get Kris's reaction to yesterday's Fed meeting. We're going to be talking support levels, liquidity, majors, and of course, we'll be taking your questions live. So if you have any questions for us, just throw it into the live chat on platform or just put them in Twitter and we will take as many as we can. And also a reminder to you all, this show is free, but of course we have a longer show on Mondays in Discord. If you sign up to RV Connect and you'll get access to that show, you'll get access to Kris Bullock's entry-level crypto portfolio, and you'll get access to Joe Bland's videos and his equity portfolio as well. Speaking of Joe Bland, video with him and Nico just dropped today on the platform. So make sure you check that out and make sure you sign up for RV Connect. And do us a favor, go ahead and like and subscribe to the show. Very helpful so we can make sure we get it into as many eyes as possible because we talk the markets here. And well, oh my God, we need market help more than ever these days. Kris, happy Thursday. How are you doing today?
Doing very well, thank you. Yes, it's an ugly day in the markets. So on days like today, I generally just like to zoom out and look at things from the most global perspective possible, because that's where you kind of get the real signal in situations like this. Like, it's easy to get caught up in the noise and follow the day to day and just get wrapped up and you end up nervous and not sleeping at night because you're just so like freaked out about what's going on a day-to-day level. But when you zoom out and kind of just look at things from a broader perspective, see what the charts are saying, things actually aren't quite that bad. So that's what I'm going to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. And glad to have you back. We normally, of course, we're here on Thursday. We're normally here on Wednesdays, and we'll be back again next Wednesday, of course. But Kris, before we dive into some charts and look at a whole bunch of items that we were talking about, why don't we get a brief reaction, your quick take on what happened in yesterday's Fed meeting with Jerome Powell?
So yeah, it was a bit mixed. I mean, if you were watching, you saw too. We got the rate cut that everybody knew was going to happen, so that was nice. That was obviously expected. That was already priced in. Not a big surprise there. So really what everybody was looking for was the tone of the press conference as per usual, and just how he saw the rest of the year playing out. He did announce that they are going to be ending QT in December, which is also positive. We were looking for that. I think a lot of people were maybe hoping that he was going to say starting now, or starting in November or whatever. So that was a little bit of a disappointment. And then the bigger disappointment came when basically he said, we're not sure if we're actually going to do a rate cut in December or not. It remains to be seen. He kind of put it down to more like a 50-50 take on that. And so it was interesting to look and see how Polymarket reacted to that. And they actually, initially they were pricing in effectively, they're a 90 or an 90% chance that we would get a rate cut in December, a 25 basis point rate cut. That dropped quite a bit down to 69%, but then has ticked back up to 70%. So Polymarket is still betting, at a 70% clip that we will see a rate cut in December. My gut says we probably will too. You could argue that he was just saying this to, I guess, sort of temper the exuberance that we're seeing in the stock market and things like that, because the actual equities markets are getting a little bit overheated, you could say, particularly in the AI sector and the tech sector and things like that. So maybe he just wanted to kind of slow things down a bit in terms of expectations. But as far as I can tell, generally the betting markets still think that we will see a rate cut. I personally think we will see a rate cut. And I think that, that combined with, which we'll get into maybe, some of the stuff going on with the trade dispute with China seems to be resolving itself. And I think that overall things are generally going to start picking back up, come next month, which is next week, basically. So I'm optimistic going forward.
Oh, all right. Let's stay optimistic. That's definitely the best thing we can do. So why don't we start diving into it and see maybe if we have reason to be optimistic in the chart. So why don't you take us through what you got for us today?
So I want to start with Bitcoin. And again, I said I was going to focus on the monthly. And so here's Bitcoin on the monthly time frame. A couple of things jump out to me. One is this green line, which is the 10-month moving average that we've essentially held really for the entire duration of this 4-year cycle that we call it, that started back in January of 2023. And we kind of touched it here at support. We wicked down below it here last summer, but we ultimately held it as support in terms of the candle body closes. Same thing with in April of earlier this year, we also wicked down below it, but ultimately never closed below it and held it as support. And then here we are now. So we've actually wicked not even all the way down to the level yet. There's still a little bit of a gap there, and the candle body itself is still a fair bit above it. So I like what I'm seeing there structurally. I think that this, it's obviously ugly. I know our patience is being tested because we've gone sideways for so long now, but we're not technically like rolling over yet. Even though the moving average itself has slowed its trajectory somewhat. We're still well above it. We're still holding above it. And then we have this sort of horizontal channel that I've drawn these lines in, and we're holding really within that as well. I mean, yes, we have wicked down below it, but we haven't closed below it. And we're holding this steady. And then if we look at this on I have this kind of log channel of the same Bitcoin chart on the monthly time frame. You can see here, we touched the bottom of the channel here. We kind of wick down to the channel here. Again, wick down to it here. We're at the bottom of the channel right now, holding support. We have not closed below it. Tomorrow is the monthly close. So I think as long as we can stay steady right here, things look good. And really kind of the bottom line, the question we all need to ask ourselves with all of this is, it's basically either this is the bottom of this correction right now, and we're gonna bounce off of here and run back up, or this is the beginning of the end and the cycle is over. And I don't think anybody, well, some people think that, but really the macro doesn't say that. The macro is nowhere close to saying that. And I just, the macro circumstances are nothing like what they were back in these previous 4-year cycle peaks back here and then back in 2017. The Fed was talking about, raising rates at that point, and everything was wildly overheated and overextended and parabolic. And this is not even remotely close to parabolic. The Fed is still talking about cutting rates. The Fed is still actively cutting rates. They're talking about ending QT, not engaging in QT. So again, it's all very much the opposite of what was going on in those previous peaks. So I just can't make a case for this being the top and it's all over when the macro is set to improve for the foreseeable future, for the next whatever year or whatever that means. So that's kind of where I'm at. And so my base case, my highest probability scenario is that we bounce from here and go back up. I'm not saying it's going to rocket up to the top of this channel necessarily in the next 2 months, but I just don't see us rolling over and this being sort of the top and that's it. And we all go home. It just doesn't make sense, especially with stocks running, especially with everything going on in the AI sector. That's not going to be slowing down anytime soon. It just makes no sense. So that's where we're at as far as Bitcoin. And generally, a lot of the other top 10 alts look pretty good on the monthly as well. I think once you start to get out of the top 10, it starts to get very risky at this point, at least in the moment. But the top 10 still looks pretty good, I would say. And we can get into those here if we want to and look at stuff as well.
Yeah, no, I think kind of what you were saying here, I think this just adds more weight to, the thesis that we've been hearing on Real Vision, especially coming from Raul and Julian of an extended cycle, right? We're kind of coming up to the end of the year, but the macro and what Jerome Powell is saying about ending QT, just super bullish, right? So I think the wins tell us one thing, even though our bags and the chart right now is down overall. Kris, why don't we hop into maybe some majors that you think are holding up particularly well or that you would feel comfortable getting into right now or just holding if you have already?
Real quick, before we get into that, one of the things I want to talk about that I think is really contributing to the volatility and contributing to the wonky price action is the liquidity environment right now, just real quick. And this yellow line represents just global M2. And we can see Bitcoin has been tracking with it. I mean, really, to a T since all the way back in March. And even just right now, we had a spike up in liquidity, a spike up in Bitcoin, immediate drop in liquidity, drop in Bitcoin. And this has been kind of rolling over. And so too is Bitcoin in this interim. And what we're seeing is because the liquidity environment is considerably tighter right now, and order books are very thin. It doesn't take much in terms of like news events to really move the needle and make things super volatile. And so I think we're going to continue to see that until this chart rolls back up to the upside, and that's kind of what we're waiting for. And that's, you know, rate cuts will help with that, and you know, ending QT will help with that. So like, it's going to be a minute, maybe. I mean, hopefully it might happen in the next week or two. But I think, you know, I won't be surprised if this takes a minute to kind of roll back up. And I think, you know, based on this, we're likely to see Bitcoin and everything follow along with it. Now, with that said, let's look at some of the other majors. Real quick, let's see, Solana. We'll start with ETH. ETH also looks good on the monthly time frame. You know, it's 10 and 20 are all the way down here. Like it's not even close to it, whereas Bitcoin was basically butted up right against these. So it's holding up nicely. It's above its bull market support band. Structurally, it actually looks better than Bitcoin, honestly, in this moment. And then Solana, kind of the same thing. It bounced nicely off its 10 and 20 where it wicked down below, and is, you know, holding this upper horizontal range nicely. It wicked below it, but the candle body is above it on the monthly. So that looks good. Other big ones in the top 10, Tron had a bit of a wobble, but it's still way above its 10-month moving average. Same thing with BNB. BNB's got a green candle this month. I mean, it's just like, it's totally like completely ignoring this downturn as if it didn't even happen, you know. XRP, little bit of a wobble, but you know, its body is actually below the 10 week or 10 month rather. But yeah, I mean, generally things look good. I wanted to touch on Hype real quickly too, because last I looked, yeah, Hype actually, despite this massive green wick down, it's still green on the month. It's still posting a green month, albeit just barely. I mean, it's less than 1%, but it's technically up on the month, which is pretty impressive given how poorly most things are doing. So, you know, I think Hype is definitely in that conversation as well. So yes, the top 10 is doing well. The rest not faring nearly as well. Many things are down double digits today. Most things are down double digits today on my watch list, and you know, they're struggling.
Well said. Why don't we, before we maybe take some questions, why don't we also take a quick look at SWE while we're on it?
Yes. It's sort of right at it's funny. I drew this support line back here based on this previous dip and monthly candle closes, and we're right at the same support level. So again, hopefully it's like when I said earlier, either this is the bottom or this is the beginning of the end. You know? Hopefully this is the bottom and it's going to bounce at the same level that it bounced previously earlier back in March. You know. And bounces from here. But it is, again, right at the level, also much uglier in that it's well down below both its 10 and its 20-month moving averages. So not a good look for SWE from a technical standpoint. But maybe maybe it bounces at the bottom of this channel like it did before.
Yeah, we're definitely at key support levels here across the board. But let's, you know, like you said, we got to bounce off of this, and it's not the beginning of the end there. And also just adds to what you were saying before, you know, the top, anything outside of the top 10 is going to be pretty risky. And SWE, while it, you know, it has been a favorite of our community, it's definitely risky in the moment. But also interesting that Hype, while outside of the top 10, has been holding up well this month.
Yeah.
All right, Kris, let's hop into some questions, shall we?
Sure.
So our first question comes from Benedict Michelle on the platform. Hi, Kris. You mentioned a week or two ago that you weren't that bothered. Oh, sorry, wrong question. The first question comes from Sebastian on the platform. Got to take them in the order that we get them. So, Kris, what do you think about Bitcoin dominance turning into green on the weekly, and ETH, Bitcoin, and Sol USD going into red on the weekly, while altcoins continue to decline? So if altcoins lag 3 months after Bitcoin or 9 months after gold, will they just start outperforming in Q2 of 2026? And to add to that, taking into account the government shutdown might prolong everything, wouldn't Bitcoin be a safe haven in that case? What are your thoughts on that, Kris?
So to answer the first part of your question, and I've talked about this on recent shows, I go back to the dominance seasonality. And so on this left side, this is Bitcoin seasonality. And I've been talking about this really since the beginning of this month, that this is actually, in terms of Bitcoin dominance, October is its strongest month overall historically. And so I was prepared for Bitcoin to outperform the rest of the market this month, and it in fact did. Though what was its average percent? 5% is its average, and it's at 1.3% right now on the month. So it underperformed its average, but it still did gain ground this month. Meanwhile, if we look at altcoin dominance in the form of others.d, we can see October is typically a red month, but then November and December are green months. And so I expected this to happen as it has thus far. And based on historical seasonality, we can, I guess, operate on the assumption that Bitcoin dominance should fade starting next month and alts should run because historically they have. So that's what I'm going on as far as that goes. And then what was the second half of the question?
The other, if the government shutdown prolongs, does that mean, would you consider Bitcoin as a safe haven asset?
Yes. I mean, of course, I definitely would. Though I don't think that the shutdown's going to last a whole lot longer. But yes, I mean, it's already proven to be that. And every time we get sort of negative news about the shutdown, it seems to help Bitcoin's case along the way. So yeah, definitely yes is the simple answer there.
Awesome. Thank you for the question, Sebastian. All right, next question comes from Benedict Michelle on the platform. Kris, you mentioned a week or two ago that you weren't that bothered with Bitcoin being around 108,000 so long as it wasn't still there in, say, 2 weeks' time. Are you more concerned now, especially as crypto keeps falling while stocks are at all-time highs?
I don't know if concerned is the right word. You could say maybe just a little bit annoyed. And again, the reason I say that is because I think we're seeing a lot of selling pressure from Bitcoin whales that continues to remain the case, and so and ETF inflows have waned. They're not necessarily upside down, but they're very just kind of neutral. So I think it's just a product of, like I've kind of been saying, it's a product of the low liquidity environment. It's a product of just the general market uncertainty with the tariffs, with China, with the Fed, the Fed and everything that's going on there. So I still am optimistic. I mean, again, I keep saying this, but it either comes back to either this is the bottom or this is the beginning of the end. And I don't think it's the beginning of the end. I can't make a case for that. And so as annoyed as I am for Bitcoin and the rest of crypto being just ugly right now, I just don't see it rolling over. I mean, sure, of course, anything can happen, but the highest probability scenario is that we bounce from here and that, we have a better, the remainder of Q2 still is, I think, upwards. Now, whether that means we rip up again, I don't know. But I mean, I've heard some people saying it's going to be at 150,000 by the end of the year. I think that's a stretch, honestly. But I do think it will be higher than it is today. So, yeah. And I still think that we're gonna push into Q1, Q2, and so on. So I remain optimistic.
All right. Thank you, Benedict, for the question. All right. Ian Dunn has a question for you. Well, first of all, this is something that we actually haven't really talked about very often on the show here. But Kris, how familiar are you with fan tokens, and what do you think about them in general? And then Ian cites OG being the best fan token, or seeming to be the best fan token.
Well, to be honest, Ian, I am not familiar with them at all. But let's take a look at the OG chart. Let's see what we can glean from that. So this is, I'm on the monthly, so I started it on the monthly. Interesting chart in that the very, very, a lot of wicks here. The wicks are jumping out at me big time. So I'm seeing very low. This tells me there's not a lot of depth, not a lot of liquidity in this asset, at least on Binance, but it should be on, if it's going to be anywhere, it would be on Binance. So I don't know. I mean, clearly it had a big month in August, another big month in September, and then October, it's corrected a bit. But the volume, it's funny, if you look at the volume historically, it hasn't necessarily exceeded any of these previous months. Even with this big massive candle here, it was on relatively low volume. I mean, even average volume, you could say, and then the subsequent volume has been even less. So it's pretty hard to glean much insight looking at it from a technical standpoint. This chart is just, it's too sideways, it's too choppy, and the wicks are too big to really get a sense of what the market is wanting to do with this asset. So I don't know. I would struggle to make a case for investing in this because to me, it would just be too unpredictable. I can't glean any insight from the technicals on this chart, essentially.
Right. Yeah, definitely nothing more than lunch money if you're interested in a fan token, as evidenced
Yeah.
by this chart with these crazy wicks.
Yeah.
All right, next question comes from Guy. He wants to get an update on SPX, and of course, we know with SPX there is no chart. But Kris, how are you feeling about SPX in the current environment? Or is it like are we finding the bottom? Are we gonna die, or is this the end, or are we gonna keep going? What are you thinking?
I don't know. I mean, it's tricky with SPX. I still remain bullish on SPX overall. I still think the sentiment is strong. I still see lots of, just anecdotal evidence of people getting out on the streets and preaching it. The thing with SPX I keep coming back to is I've never seen any other altcoin out there, or I'm sorry, meme coin rather, where people are making their own t-shirts, making their own flyers, writing their own books, going out on the street and talking about it, passing out information, building their own websites even, and it's not like there's a centralized entity that's doing this. It's the community. Each one of these people are taking it upon themselves to go out and create this merchandise, make their own sticker packs and go out and stick them everywhere, putting flyers up on billboards and stuff like that. Find me any other meme where anybody has done that. And that's what I keep coming back to. And this just tells me that this has the grassroots just sort of groundswell that is going to be needed to continue to pump this asset going forward. And I think the fact that it hasn't really dropped that much, we're still seeing, if you go and look at the holder scan and the specs, no sort of OG whales are selling their positions. No whale has ever sold a majority share of any of their position. And just the diamond-handedness of this community still, I think, remains strong. And it's yes, everything is down right now across the board, but I'm just not seeing the rapid sort of sell-off rollover that we would see with most other memes, honestly. And so I remain positive about it. And I think that, right now with just everything down, you're going to see some short-term holders and some traders, moving the prices more than maybe you'd like to see. But again, it's not really about that. I think, I think the goal remains the goal. And it's still in effect. I mean, go back and watch the video that Murad put out, it was 2 weeks ago, how to find the next 100x altcoin. And he laid out a 45-minute case for why SPX it is and remains the best, meme out there. And everything he said in that video still holds true today, regardless of what the price is showing you. So nothing has changed on that front. And I remain confident.
Oh, very well said. One thing I, always loved about SPX is it has such a simple yet very memeable goal, which is, of course, flipping the S&P 500. So anyone that, is in crypto or has any inkling of knowledge of finance understands what the S&P is, and understands also how hilarious that goal is to flip the S&P 500. So it is a noble cause. So we're rooting for SPX here. All right, Kris, we're up on time for today, so I wanted to throw it to you. We'll be back, of course, on Monday for our live show in Discord. But until then, what do you want to leave us with, or what are some thoughts we should think about going into the weekend until we see you on Monday again?
I mean, I know it sucks right now, but just don't get wrapped up in the day-to-day. I mean, as always, when things are ugly, you just need to just zoom out and consider what's driving all of these markets right now. Think about the macro. Don't just look at today's price action and think that, oh, it's down. That means, everything's dead. And don't get so hung up on this 4-year cycle narrative either. I know it's easy to, but we know there's only 2 or 3 data points, it's hard to make such an argument for that when it's like, yes, technically it happened 3 times, but that doesn't mean that it's going to happen exactly this time every time going forward. There's lots of reasons why it happened the way it did in the past, and none of those reasons are sort of in effect now, like I said. So not that the 4-year cycle is a myth or whatever. It happened the way it happened, and I get it, but just we're seeing the whole economy shift, across the board. It's not just crypto, and crypto is just riding that wave with everything else. And so you can't just say, oh, the economy is going to keep running for another year, but crypto, the 4-year cycle's peaked and it's over. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So just, again, zoom out, consider all of the information. That's why we're here at Real Vision. That's why we watch all of these amazing shows and all these amazing guests and experts, economic experts, amazing panel discussions, people who know a lot more than we do, frankly. And everything that I'm seeing from everybody that I watch, like, nobody thinks that it's over, literally nobody. So there you go.
There you go. Kris, it's been a pleasure as always. Thanks again. And everyone, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back, of course, on Monday. Remember, as always, don't fuck this up. Until then, we'll see you all next week. Take care, everyone.